Wired contributor Zach Carabell and National Taxpayers Union Senior Fellow, Forward Strategies President Mattie Duppler is here. Great to see you this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for joining us. And the big news yesterday, of course, was Jay Powell on the Hill. Dagan, he spoke to the Senate yesterday, and we've got day 2 today. What struck you yesterday?
Well, that he seemed to suggest in some of his testimony that all of these ideas floated by these newfangled socialists, whether it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, even Bernie Sanders, and many people actually running for the Democratic nomination for president, that Jay Powell said yesterday that the idea that deficits don't matter for countries that can borrow in their own currency, I think that's wrong. He said that, and he gets into the idea of the U.S. fiscal policy. He said, again, he called it unsustainable over the long haul. And I think this speaks directly to these ideas that the Federal Reserve can somehow basically fund all these programs, which in that FAQ from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that shouldn't have gotten out, that was so laughably dumb, that it talked about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve bailed out the banks, and now they're going to pay for the help pay for the Green New Deal.
And we heard this from Elizabeth Warren yesterday, where really her only commentary was the Fed and the banks and Wall Street are too cozy, that they're not doing their job. I thought that I was surprised that there wasn't more discussion about employment, what the full employment picture looks like, because that, of course, is what the Fed has concentrated on for the last several months, is talking about whether or not inflation and employment are where they're supposed to be. Powell at the end actually had to volunteer what patience looks like for the Fed, because senators hadn't pressed him on this.
Well, it's been a pretty good economy, Zach. We just got more numbers out. Best Buy beat estimates on earnings and revenue. $14.8 billion in revenue versus 14.7 estimate. Earnings $272 versus an estimate of $257.
Thank God for the Geek Squad. Otherwise, Best Buy would have gone the way of Circuit City and no longer be existing. Look, I mean, this whole question of deficits and consumer spending, really strong economy, no inflation, no economists, the Fed, anybody has really figured out this conundrum. So it's true they're going to do the party line, which is you can't do this forever because eventually rates are going to spike and people won't borrow. Problem is, eventually is such a questionable time frame. Eventually we're all dead. So is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? Is it $50 trillion of debt? We have absolutely no idea. And while he's going to be prudent and conservative and say this can't go on and this is not an AOC or left thing. I mean, Congress under the Republicans spent just as much as the Democrats did. But the fact is, right now it isn't a problem. We just don't know when it's going to be one.
Yeah, all right. We got Best Buy shares, by the way, up 10% this morning. That's going to be a highlight all day. We'll be watching that one as it beat estimates on both earnings and revenue. President Trump sitting down with to dinner momentarily.